Hi, this is my review of Crawling Under a Broken Moon issue number 5. Now, this is one of my favorite issues. It's so awesome. It's basically a tribute to He-Man and the Masters of the Universe. And when I was a kid, I loved this show that is the first series of He-Man, because I know that there have been several comic books and graphic novels and new cartoons, but the original one is my favorite one, and He-Man was kind of like my role model, and they had all those what would you say, good advice or moral at the end of the story, basically telling you good things so they could stay out of trouble as a kid when you were growing up. So I really loved that show. In fact, I'm not exactly sure, but I think the Mexican airing is the only one that has lyrics to the main theme. It went kind of like El universo ya está protegido por el poder de Grayskull, con secretos poderes que encierra el castillo, He-Man luchará hasta el final. I'm going to see if I can find that song on YouTube. It's probably around here somewhere, so you can hear it if you feel curious about it. And now let's talk about this issue. Let's talk about the quality. Well, the document is not bookmarked, but it's a fairly short issue, just 28 pages long, so you have no trouble at all navigating the issue. And you have the awesome old school illustrations, as expected, of Crawling Under a Broken Moon. And just take a look at the cover. It's quite glorious in its 80s sense. And you basically have He-Man and a bunch of parodies of his allies, and you also have like the Skeletor version of Crawling Under a Broken Moon. Really awesome. So this issue is one of my favorites, if not my favorite issue so far. And everything is well written and explained. I did find a few typos, but I like the quality overall. Now let's talk about the contents. First, after having an introduction and explaining how this is basically an emulation of the gonzo mishmash science fantasy theme of He-Man, or you could basically compare it with Thunder as well, but this is pure He-Man, and you will notice that you will become aware of it as we go into the review. So first, you have information on the Kingdom of Ethereum. So you have this place in America that, after going through some very radical changes, especially because of objects that fell from came from outer space, and this strange race of robotic-like individuals known as the unmanned that almost destroyed that area, but were defeated because they basically worked on Wi-Fi. In a way of speaking, so the humans and dwarves managed a way to create some sort of interference with the signal, and all the unmanned went down. And the unmanned left different weapons and high technology devices behind, and so the citizens and tribes of Etheria took them to use as their own weapons and armor and vehicles. They're basically bunkers. They're pretty much gray castles, that is castles made out of gray stone, a reference to Grayskull obviously, and that they hold different types of weapons, vehicles and armor that you can find and take for your own characters, and it's going to be quite challenging to understand how they work and how to power them up, because they are quite limited in their uses. So in Etheria, you basically have people that, as I was telling you, they live in tribes. But there was this great hero, Macho. And Macho, using his ancient technology and his incredible battle prowess, managed to unite everyone. And he gave some sense of unity or coherence to the kingdom of Etheria. And then you have information on the Etherian hero. And obviously this is a reference to Eternia from He-Man. And the Etherian hero character class is basically a way for you to become He-Man. And in some ways you also feel slightly like a Jedi Knight, not so much, but it's mostly about He-Man. So you have this code, the Song of Macho, And Macho said, "Yeah," said Macho, "it is my will that ye battle forever with evil, to live for glory and never bend, to protect the weak and the orphaned, to see the end of each challenge begun, to eschew other work till the battle is won. Etheria's heroes you will befriend, yet be enemy to evil magicians." So this is the code that all of the Etherian heroes follow, even if they are lawful or neutral or chaotic. This is the code that they use as a sort of guideline to become a hero. However, everybody has his or her own interpretation of this code. So for example, when it says to see the end of each challenge begun, to eschew other work till the battle is won, some heroes basically take it as an excuse to simply not to work at anything else. They will not carry any menial tasks or average jobs or work because they are fighting evil. And because the fight against evil never ends, they basically have an excuse not to work ever in their lifetimes, as long as they keep fighting evil. And they demand sort of like a tribute or payment from different villages. And in fact, the king of the Etherian kingdom is constantly hiring or maybe has some Etherian heroes under his command, and he sends them off to battle. But the Etherian heroes, they live off the different people that they protect. So if you're an Etherian hero, you better do your job, or you're going to become useless. So as you can see, there are many ways to twist this code to your own advantage. The Ethereum hero is quite tough when it comes to hit points, but it's somewhat particular in his weapon training. You can use armor and different weapons, even technological weapons, especially Ethereum and Forgotten Tech, but using anything else is a risk to your honor. This class has a lot to do with your honor as an Ethereum hero. Now, Ethereum Tech is basically fancy gear. They are swords, axes, breastplates that are fashioned with different materials to look gnarly, awesome, radical. You know, they look really weird. And you even have a small table to see what they are made of, and we will get into that in a bit. Before that, let me tell you that you have a table to create the name of your hero. You have different battle traits and chaotic suffixes and lawful prefixes and neutral suffixes, even heroic suffixes that you can use to create your name. So for example, and now maybe I'm not going to follow the exact guidelines because it depends on whether you are lawful, neutral, or chaotic, but maybe you are Lord Smash O, and that means you are actually quite powerful because the O is an heroic suffix. Or maybe you are Princess Stav Row. Stop. Now you can see very weird names. And if you are a chaotic hero, maybe you are Hitod or Power R or Sneakoid. And it's quite fun because each hero is going to feel quite different in his characteristics and name. And then you have equipment requirements. As I was telling you, you will have to constantly search for forgotten technology. Ethereum tech is basically just a fancy way of representing your status as an Ethereum hero, but your weapons won't have special powers or bonuses. You need to look for this forgotten tech. And you can find it while searching in different gray castles, as I was telling you, or other places. You can actually request different technological weaponry, but you have to pass a check. And so the Ethereum hero, you would think that he would need to stay close to the Ethereum kingdom, but because these gray castles are all over the place, you can have campaigns in many places that are far away. You just have to come up with an excuse that there's an Ethereum castle nearby for your Ethereum hero to replenish his gear. And you have all the stats on the Ethereum armor. And as I was telling you, the materials and origins, because for example, maybe you have this Ethereum armor that is made out of a vehicle hood, and its main material is shiny steel, or perhaps carbon fiber. And its appearance, maybe it's luminous, or maybe it's etched, or maybe it's transparent. So you could have like a breastplate showing your nipples and all of that. And even give you the value of the armor class, of course. You also have Ethereum melee weapon stats. They're usually quite difficult to wield because of their awkward size, and many of you, of course, remember the He-Man's sword, that it kind of looks vaguely like a Coca-Cola bottle shape at the blade. It's quite an awkward shape to wield, so it's somewhat difficult to use it to strike, but if you deal damage, it deals considerably more damage, especially when you it has some special abilities, but that's more on the field of forgotten technology. And then you have details on honor above all, because you need to follow the Ethereum code, even though it's open to the code of the Son of Macho. Even though it's open to interpretation, you have some more hard guidelines, because, for example, you have the eschew the use of normal weapons and armor, so you will take a hit to your honor, and your honor actually empowers your attacks. So if you use, let's say, peasant-like weaponry, you need to pass a check, or your honor will suffer for it. And you also you must refuse taking part in menial tasks and average jobs and works, because you're a hero. Those tasks are beneath you. And then you need to answer to any challenge offered by worthy opponents. That is, if you are just starting out as an Ethereum hero and you get challenged by a bandit king, that's a worthy challenge. But maybe you have conquered demons and giants and dragons and all sorts of nasty stuff, and the same bandit king could challenge you again, but he is unworthy, so you do not need to answer that challenge. Just laugh it off. You know. And then you have more details about the setting. Now, something that is also quite noteworthy of the setting of the Ethereum kingdom is that at first you could think it's illogical, because you have these different tribes that only use primitive weapons like spears and axes and such, and you would think, how can they survive in this post-apocalyptic setting where you have bazookas and machine guns and tanks and all sorts of technology? And but that's why the Ethereum kingdom, the city hires all of these heroes that are equipped with high technology. So as you can see, there is an excuse for this Ethereum kingdom to thrive and survive in post-apocalyptic times. And they have information on the forgotten tech of the unmanned, because these unmanned are just lying around everywhere. So you have details on blasters, jetpacks, armor. So you can come up with your own vehicles or take some examples from He-Man. Do you remember that? I forgot the name. There was like a flying motorcycle of sorts, or like a water ski that flies. And you could have that, and you have all the information on the charges and different meltdown effects, because this is forgotten tech. There is a chance that it's going to perhaps melt down or explode because of some weird gonzo effect. So you have all the details concerning that. You also have examples of common forgotten tech like blast rays. And you have the power harness, and it reminds me of that old armor from the He-Man action figures. Do you remember that you had like this breastplate, and when you hit it, it kind of spinned and gave the impression that it was damaged? So you have the power harnesses like that. And all of these different pieces of forgotten tech have different powers. Some of those enable you to fly or use a force field, so you get a strength boost. And now the cool thing is that maybe you remember that the swords that came with the He-Man action figures, they could what would you say, they fit together, they locked on like a piece of a puzzle. And here you have a star device of swords that you create by joining all of the swords. And it serves as sort of like a battery for some forgotten tech gear to empower it. And you have details on the power swords, and they are quite extravagant in their appearance. They usually have like neon pink or orange colors, because many of the old action figures actually had those colors, those ridiculous weapons that had these shiny colors that were just there so that the kids would like them, because when you're a kid you like those things that leave an impression on you. Quite exaggeratedly so. And so these weapons are like that, so you can walk around with your orange glowing sword. And you have all the unique powers for different swords. maybe some weapons allow you to open doors, or maybe they deal subdual damage, or maybe they shoot rays out of them. And you can also deflect attacks. That's what I will tell you, that you felt a bit like a Jedi, but it was quite common for He-Man to bounce off different energy attacks in the cartoon. So here you can do that as well. And then you have information of Into the Darklands. Now this is like a mini campaign setting of this issue. It's basically a very hostile land with many alien and monstrous landscape features with toxic gases and strange flora and fauna and places where monstrous creatures can hide. And you have details on the Great Liberator Black Sun, which is basically, they are non-player characters. For example, Black Sun crash landed in Ethereum over a decade ago in a small spacecraft. Lacking memories of his former life, he joined Ethereum society and was appalled at the conditions of the common man. So he's basically like a rebel. He wants to bring down the Ethereum kingdom, and you have all the details concerning that if you want to take your campaign towards that route. But you also have the Warrior Lich Skull Ore, which is basically Skeletor, and you have all the details. Now, and this is going to be a spoiler, so keep that in mind, but actually, here, Scholar could potentially become an ally. They aren't exactly completely good characters in this setting. Scholar actually noticed the very nasty secret of the Castle Old Skull, which is basically the crawling under a broken moon's version of Grayskull, because this Castle Old Skull feeds upon the energy of captured magicians. So Scholar discovered the secret, and he became a league after making a sort of like a pact with Sezregan. And so he has his a group of henchmen that he sends into battle, but they always fail, they always lose, and this is obviously like a sort of parody to what happens in the cartoon of He-Man, that he always defeated all the bad guys. So sometimes you get the feeling that Scholar is just sending them to so that they get their butt kicked, and then he gets angry at them. And you have all these illustrations that are obvious references to different villains in the show. And you have details on Castle Old Skull and the Masters of Etheria. So here you have all the details if you want to belong to the Castle Old Skull, or you want to fight against the inhabitants, or perhaps the castle itself. Because this castle, while not completely evil, well, you could say that it's sort of like a benevolent dictator. This sentient castle implants suggestions upon its heroes, and basically forces them to go into noble quests. And they do fight powerful evil wizards, but they're basically out there to capture them and to put them into the bowels of Castle Old Skull so that it feeds upon them. In fact, any spellcaster that stays too long and inside or around Castle Old Skull, it will start losing his or her spellcasting capabilities. You can have like an entire village nearby filled with wizards that got their magical powers drained from them, and he keeps them in sort of like a trance where they're constantly happy. It keeps them like constantly stoned. So you have so it's up to you if you want to work for the castle or fight against it. And you have details on the Masters of Umerica. So they are all parodies of He-Man and his friends. You have Mighty Man, which is basically He-Man, and you have Master of Arms, Bug-Off, Marshman. You have Slam Man, Gecko, and like Orko. He was actually a very powerful wizard. You get a sense like he's almost like a demigod, but he got his powers drained, and he got lobotomized into a battery of enormous power in the service of Old Skull. You will have details on how to bond with Old Skull, because you do get some powers from Old Skull. You have like a party of only warriors and clerics and rogues, thieves, and such. You could maybe it's an advantageous for you to become to form this sort of link with Old Skull. You even have information on the penalties for betraying Old Skull, like a table detailing Old Skull's wrath, because maybe Old Skull was momentarily distracted and you did not it did not notice your infraction, but maybe the castle inflicts you with some sort of illness or pain, or maybe one piece of equipment bonds permanently to you as a cybernetic implant. So you become kind of like, what was the name of this villain? It was Trapjaw? I think it was Trapjaw. So it's kind of like that. And you have the Twisted Menagerie, that is new enemies or potential allies, but perhaps, who knows, like the Serpentoid, and you have different, let's say, traits or mutations. Maybe a Serpentoid has a tongue lash, or maybe another one has venomous spittle, or one is able to constrict his enemies. You also have a random table detailing Darkland mutagenic herbs, because there are herbs that, for example, chewing these leaves will cause the person's muscles to expand massively in a short amount of time. So you become stronger, but you take some damage to your stamina. And you also have some, this rare flower is magically potent. It's a magically potent fertility enhancement and enables crossbreeding with other species. And then you have details on the unmanned, so you can use them as enemies as well. And I think it's going to be quite exciting, for example, to plant some unmanned encounters in a sandbox type of campaign, so that perhaps the players can hunt them down and take some gear and equipment out of their bodies, because they're basically like cyborgs or androids. They're quite a mystery. And you even have like a random table of unmanned equipment. Maybe one of them is equipped with a flamethrower, another one has a plasma cannon, maybe the other one has like an extension arms or a hypno box. And you also have information on the unmanned drones, which is basically, they are robot servitors of the unmanned. So what do I think of issue number 5? It's one of my favorite issues of Crawling Under a Broken Moon. The only thing that I would have liked if they, perhaps the addition of stats for the different masters of Umerica and more of the henchmen of Skull Ore, but that would really extend the magazine quite a bit to a complete book perhaps. So overall, I really enjoy it, and I think that fans of He-Man are going to go nuts about this issue. They're going to love it. There are so many ways to recreate like a parody or mock setting of He-Man. And if you want to play as He-Man, you have the Ethereum hero character class that is also quite powerful as long as you stick to the Song of Macho. So I definitely recommend that you get Crawling Under a Broken Moon issue number 5. Well, thanks for watching my review. If you have any comments or questions, please let me know. See you later.